Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for the JOJOLands Chapter 8 review titled Let's Go Look at Luxury Watches, as following the game's recent battle, they have some time to kill before their flight back to Oahu and decide to learn more about the lava rock's power, giving the story a chance to slow down a bit and offer a chapter with a more lighthearted and comedic tone, which is something the JOJOLands has done an excellent job of so far when we're not in the middle of a stand fight, so it's great to see more of these casual interactions between this brand new cast of characters, capturing some of the exploration and slice of life tones from Diamond is Unbreakable, which Araki also seems to be referencing with this chapter title, Let's Go Look at Luxury Watches, being a callback to some of the Part 4 arcs such as Let's Go Hunting, Let's Go to the Manga Artist's House, and Let's Go Eat Some Italian Food, all activities that inevitably lead to a stand fight. So jumping into the chapter, starting with the cover page, we have a brand new Jodio pose, thank God, with the part's emblem in the background and the lava rock in the middle, decorated by a bunch of major characters and objects from the story so far, symbolizing its importance. With the narration, in this adventure revolving around the lava rock, what yet unknown mechanisms await. The chapter then opens with a double-page spread of another real-life location similar to Chapter 2, taking place on South King Street. But now on Main Island, Hawaii, we appear to be on Ali'i Drive, which is just a short ways from the Kona International Airport, where I assume our characters are heading. And looking at a map of Main Island, Hawaii, you can see the game's relative position to the island's national park and where Rohan most likely took the photos of the volcano and where the lava rock came from. So I just love the sense of realism Araki provides with the setting, as it adds so much more life to the adventure with the depictions of these landmarks, similar to parts 5 and 7 being these stories that span these very iconic locations. So back on Ali'i Drive, the gang stops for some food while they wait for their departure back to Oahu, which is in about 2 hours. And right at the start here, there's this pretty funny interaction with some police who Jodio gives a smile and a wave to while they just stare back at this group of pretty sus looking teenagers in a busted up convertible, but shrug it off like, let's not even get involved. And Paco remarks that Rohan did in fact keep his promise to not report them. So we have a release of tension that was in the background, and it seems Rohan does care more about Jodio's future or just the lava rock itself than the price of the diamond, regardless of who it belongs to. And while the gang are waiting for their food, we can see in the background that Araki drew one of America's national treasures, Raising Cane's, which in real life doesn't even have a location on Main Island, but is on Oahu and Maui. So something about that Cane's chicken stuck in Araki's mind where he just felt compelled to put it in JoJo, probably back in Japan right now lawning for a box combo. So while sitting around the table, we get some banter where Usagi asks Dragona to lend him 20 bucks because he's flat broke, and Dragona just straight up asks him if his family is poor, and Usagi casually drops that his dad used to work in construction but got hit by a bus and died, and his mom is sitting on some insurance money back home, which he just breezes over in such a matter-of-fact manner, which is pretty in line with Usagi's character, who so far is the most boisterous and outspoken member of the group with some pretty neurodivergent characteristics, as he's extremely smart when it comes to analyzing stands, or fighting his way out of a tricky situation, but when it comes to just talking, he blurts out whatever comes to mind. And speaking on Usagi's analytical side, during this downtime, he proposes to run an experiment with the lava rock, and is actually asking logical questions myself and many readers would also like to know, like how does the rock tell what's worth money and what isn't, and how does the rock identify its owner, and why is it only attracting Rohan's property? And just thank God we get a moment like this and the characters actually sit down and talk to each other about these sort of things instead of immediately being thrown into the next stand fight. And the initiative taken by the group here to actually try and figure this thing out in a practical way reads a lot more natural and provides a cathartic sense of progression I definitely wasn't expecting but really appreciate. So what we thought we knew about the lava rock is that it attracts valuables, but in the recent chapters, the ability has become a lot more nuanced. The first detail Usagi notes is that the rock only attracted valuables that belonged to Rohan, so it must in some way remember its owner or the things it's been near, most likely a person who has held onto it for a certain period of time or an object that has been in close proximity to it. Jodio is the first one who proposes the theory that it's a matter of distance. Either close to or touching the rock will hypothetically tether the two objects. The game puts the theory to the test with Dragona's $20, putting the lava rock on top of it for about 3 to 4 minutes, then Usagi marks the bill with the same little logo on his t-shirt and throws it aside. Another person quickly snatches it up and spends it at a nearby food stand, and the group thinks the experiment was a bust. Meanwhile, we cut to Paco, who is the one getting all of the food, and we see a fly buzz into his drink, so he then goes back to the shop, gets a refund, and returns to the group with the same $20 that Usagi had just thrown, confirming their theory. So the lava rock doesn't just pull in any any and all valuables. If that was the case, they'd be running around like Sonic with a magnet power-up. Rather, the rock only attracts valuables that have been in close proximity to it or already owned by whoever is in possession of the rock. So the ability seems to be amplified by time, distance, and value. Think back to chapter 5 when the gang were fighting Rohan. The diamond that was in the safe with the rock was practically teleporting back to it. Meanwhile, Rohan's cash and other valuables that were just around the villa slowly gravitated to the rock. So it could be a distance thing that triggers the effect, or it could also depend on the monetary value of said object, because the diamond with the strongest effect was also the most valuable, and more will be added to this theory later on in this chapter. This experiment also confirms that the lava rock is connected to the flow in some vague manner, as many of us suspected. So we have seen valuables physically move on their own towards the lava rock, but now we see it has the power to manipulate the fates of living things. For example, the fly going into Paco's drink, Paco going back to complain, and the restaurant giving him a refund for exactly $20 was all a path created by the lava rock's power. Multiple connected events just for the purpose of returning Dragona's 20. This type of power is something Araki has done in the past and is what I would consider a flow-based ability. Other examples of this would be Milagro Man and Wonder of You. Like how Wonder of You uses others unknowingly to create calamities, like people knocking into you or a reckless driver. So the stand doesn't physically control them, but it does alter their paths through the flow of calamity, without removing their free will. Mamazuku had described this type of power as an attack whose shape and direction cannot be perceived. And this is nearly the exact same concept as Milagro Man unknowingly affecting the paths and actions of everyone around the affected target for the result of a monetarily positive flow. And in this chapter, the resultant effect is almost identical, with the $20 returning, but also with free food and the extra drink. So that's definitely a new aspect of the rock we haven't seen before, and I don't even think the gang fully understood what happened, just shocked that the money actually came back. So while they still have some time to kill, Dragona proposes they do another test and see what happens if they bring the rock into a luxury watch store, saying he doesn't think it's a good idea to board the flight back home until they know exactly what the lava rock is, saying he's just doing what's absolutely necessary. Although on a second read through of this chapter, I picked up more on a sense of greed coming from Dragona here, because when looking at the page when the $20 came back, you can see Dragona is pretty surprised, followed by a look of realization, which leads into his whole plan to test the rock on crazy expensive watches, which for whatever reason is absolutely necessary. So honestly, we don't know much about Dragona, and this could be him taking advantage of the situation, as he gets Jodio to hand over the lava rock, which is weirdly interrupted by a title drop in the part's tagline. This is the story of one boy becoming filthy rich. So interesting that right at this moment, Araki reminds us that just one boy will become filthy rich, possibly foreshadowing a conflict the lava rock may cause between the brothers or just the group in general. As in this panel, Jodio is drawn in this like super foreboding way, almost like he's going to do bad things in order to become filthy rich. But then we turn the page and cut straight to Jodio and Paco going to get some chicken burritos, so pretty strange tone shift there for just a second, possibly menacing foreshadowing, possibly comedic effect, hard to tell sometimes. So now inside the watch store, it's super high end with security all over the place, and Dragona is just kind of going around holding the lava rock up against the displays that he's hiding behind his chest piece, which totally doesn't look suspicious at all. And he also brought along Usagi, who somehow is less suspicious than Paco and Jodio, and almost immediately blows their cover, talking about Polexes and wireless charging watches and pure gold, although Dragona quickly recovers by flashing the salesman their diamond, letting them know that they're big players. So of course the store rolls out the red carpet, giving them their own couch, offering them beverages, and brings them watches upwards of $80,000 to try on. So now in plain sight, Dragona is able to put the watches on and hold them against his chest, which shouldn't be suspicious at all, although after trying a few on, one of the security guards and the salesman seem to notice something, and they quickly lock the doors, and ask Dragona to place the watch back on the table, revealing that one of the 4 watches is gone, and it wasn't even one of the watches we saw Dragona try on. And the scene ends with Dragona looking behind his chest piece and being shocked, as most likely the watch had teleported towards the rock and now appears like Dragona tried to steal it. So we don't know exactly why that watch was drawn to the lava rock, showing that there's still a lot of mystery involved with this power. One possibility is that this was the first watch Dragona looked at when they walked in, as it looks kinda similar to the watch that disappeared, and during that first attempt with the rock, there was a small point in time that we didn't exactly see. As if you notice, there's that time shift overlay applied to those panels, and then suddenly Dragona's chest piece switches to his other hand. So maybe there was a few seconds there of Dragona holding the rock up against the display before the salesman walked over. Another theory is that the watch that disappeared was the most valuable out of the 4, as it had way more diamonds on it than the others. So regardless of Dragona trying it on or the distance to the rock, it could always just prioritize the most valuable item, which makes the most sense as the only other item we have seen straight straight up disappear or teleport was the $6 million diamond. So while it's been a lot of fun seeing more into the rock's true power and the characters using it to get into some trouble, giving off those part 4 vibes, what I also found interesting in this scene was the reaction the employees had. So it could be a case where they didn't actually see Dragona take the watch, but the fact that it was missing was enough to suspect him of stealing. Or what could be a lot cooler is that the shop understands that they are using a lava rock and trying to steal. I mean, just look at these guys, big stand user vibes. And when the security guard's attention was piqued was when Dragona was holding the watch to his chest. And it's not completely impossible that there could be more lava rocks in existence, as they are on the island where they came from. So maybe these shop owners, considering they work with expensive watches every day, have encountered something like this before. And I think that could add a lot to the mystery behind the lava rock, as well as to the world building of JoJo's Hawaii, giving more insight into the culture behind the supernatural that exists here. Because I doubt this whole situation could really be resolved with Dragona just saying sorry and putting the watch back, because at this point, they'll probably be forced to steal the watch, because it's either leave with the watch or leave the lava rock, now that those two objects seem to be tethered. Either way, not a very thought out plan on Dragona's part, to be honest, and that's where we leave off inside the watch store. Meanwhile, outside, Jodio and Paco tried to get the car when they notice a parking spot open up, but when Jodio goes to grab their chicken, he finds a spooky surprise inside the bag, being the 3 cats from the last arc crushed inside. I assume they had just gotten back from the chicken place, so either the enemy stand user was like undercover at the restaurant packing their food and put the cats inside, probably to mess with them or to warn them, being like, hey, I'm still watching you, I need that lava rock back, or maybe the cats and the potential enemy stand user has the ability to manifest them wherever they want. Maybe like a piece of string was still attached to Jodio or Paco, and the cats can regrow from just one piece of it, and again, just doing all of this to mess with them. And speaking of last chapter's fight, notice how no one has any injuries whatsoever. Like, they don't even mention that the wounds went away, or they got patched up, or that they're still in pain or anything, which is fine if we're doing the Stardust Crusaders thing where the characters can just heal overnight or off screen, but I just find it takes away from a lot of the tension during these fights if I know that no injury is permanent and it can just go away. So I always thought JoJo made a lot of progress with its implementation of healing type stands and abilities, like especially Zombie Horse and Cream Starter being extremely relevant resources during Steel Ball Run was really good writing, and a character may have to endure an injury until they could heal it or need to go after that character to get that resource. So just in my opinion, don't rely on excessive violence and injuries to build tension and get emotional investment from your readers if you're not going to take it serious or consider the impact of the violence. I thought Araki learned this back in part 4. So just for example, if in the next arc Jodio gets stabbed through the stomach and Dragona's arm gets ripped open for dramatic effect, I will literally have no emotional reaction because I know it can simply be forgotten in the next chapter. Like, did Smooth Operator steal them? Is that what's going on? I would like to see that. But that's where the chapter leaves off with a really exciting cliffhanger, Usagi and Dragona locked inside the shop, with Paco and Jodio soon to be confronted by the enemy stand user, who we've been dealing with since chapter 2 now, which is when the cats first appeared. So a really big setup for this character, gets me excited for them, and makes me wonder if they really are just a minor villain, or it could possibly be the introduction to the part's larger villain group, and really open up the world for this part a little bit more. So the JoJoLands will be on hiatus next month, marking the first hiatus during its serialization, although I would definitely say this is a well-deserved break for Araki after giving us consistent heaters 8 months in a row now. And it'll be perfect that the JoJoLands will be returning in November for its 9th chapter. Even makes me think Araki is cooking up something special for the whole 9-theme month, as Araki also revealed in Volume 1 that the word November, that Jodio's stand is named after, is derived from the Latin root novem, meaning 9. And the last thing I got for you guys this month is just a bit of extra behind the scenes look at the JoJoLands creation process that was recently revealed, specifically the part's logo design. So this is a bunch of drafts from the part's official logo made by Noriki Narumi, who is also the logo designer for JoJoLand, thus spoke Rohan Kishibe, and worked on general cover design for Steel Ball Run. And on the left side, we can see that one of the other name ideas for the part was Made in JoJoLands, referencing Made in Heaven. Ultimately, she landed on a more simple design that utilizes an upwards arrow because of JoJo's iconic to be continued arrow, but also volcanoes erupting vertically and the upwards aspirations of young people. And she also added triangular edges to many of the letters to represent a traveling vibe with tickets, airplanes, and passports. So having studied typography and type design in college and still being sort of a hobby of mine, I would definitely say the final logo is one of the best here. It's very clean, legible, and carries subtle detail about the part's themes and location without being too overwhelming. So shout out to Noriko, as she's clearly a very talented designer, as all of these look amazing, even the most stylized ones, and I appreciate her sharing all these drafts and the process of creating this logo. So alright everyone, that's gonna do it for this month's JoJoLands review. Thank you all so much for watching. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and I'll see you all back here in November for Chapter 9. But don't worry, I'll talk to you guys before then in a new vid, so stay tuned to the channel for some spooky season content coming in October. Maybe some JoJo, maybe some more Dodo Hit Dodo. So until then, stay safe everyone, and I'm out. Peace!